I still am unable to sleep at night for fear of retaliation. I will always be afraid that he will find me, no matter how much time has passed. I am no longer able to trust people as I did before. The defendant took a part of me that I'll never be able to get back. The sweet, loving social butterfly that I once was is gone. He took my dignity and defiled me. I still have nightmares about that night. My family has been extremely supportive, but is also still reeling from that night, even after all this time. I don't feel safe, even in my own home. My family doesn't feel safe. Sometimes I even still smell the material of the booth from the bar. I still feel his hands in my telling me to take it as he tore into every part of me.
We just heard from the survivor, and her fear could not be more overstated. We are watching the parole hearing of a man who's already served time for his role as a thug for hire on behalf of the Genovese crime family. He also has ties to the Albanian mob. It must have taken beyond, I can't imagine the courage that it took for her to get up on the stand and convict him of this essay. He's already done years of time for extortion, for armed robbery, like I said, for being a thug for hire for one of the most notorious crime families. Well, now he has a chance for parole. Now, there is a lot of information on this case, article after article after article, and I'll unpack it with all those details at the end.
Dardian C DOC 39062.
This hearing is being conducted in consideration for parole application for Dardian C DOC 389062. He is serving a sentence of 14 years to serve with 6 years of special parole for aggravated sexual assault first degree and failure to appear first degree. As of today, records reflect a eligibility date of December 14th, 2024. There is victim input in this case. There is an offender accountability plan for the offender. It has been reviewed and shows the offender has completed the following programs. Short-term sex treatment offender program. Utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system scores the offender's overall score for recidivism falls in the low range. This is your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole. You may begin.
I'm sorry, Officer Williams, he also has a static score.
Yes, and he has a static score of 0, which is in the low range.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I want to start by saying that I accept full responsibility and accountability for my actions. I am remorseful. I want to say I'm sorry to the victim's family, my friends, as well as the community. As you say, I've been incarcerated since 2014, and when I came in, I was given an OAP, which I did. I had life skills program, and I had to get a job. I took the life skills. It was sexual behavior. It was very, very helpful, a lot knowledgeable. I learned a lot of stuff in it. And I maintained the job throughout the facilities. Also, I went on taking, I volunteered for the following programs as well. I volunteered for Voices. I successfully completed it. Voices, I learned a lot of things in Voices that it didn't matter what the crime was. There's always somebody that was a victim or somebody impacted, and indirectly and directly. That just opened my eyes to a lot of things. Also, I took Threshold. That was more of a budgeting program, learning how to budget, learning how to live out in a free world. Then I continued, I took anger management. I volunteered as well for all of these programs. Anger management, I learned, once again, I learned a lot from that as well. I learned where my triggers were. I actually I called my family and friends, and which I did not know until I took the program, and they told me that a lot of times that either I showed up in the vet at a home, they knew just by my look, by my behavior, and a lot of the triggers I didn't know, sweaty palms or just pacing. So I am aware. After I completed that program, I volunteered for domestic violence. Domestic violence was a program that it was extremely helpful as well. I've learned a lot. There was too many things that I did not know, I was not aware. And I am very knowledgeable now in that aspect of it, as well as on my relationship to work on. It gave me a lot of great pointers, what not to do and what to do. And even as far as an argument to learn how to call a timeout, walk away, cool down, so it doesn't result to any physical, and then revisit the conversation. Lastly, also, I took good intentions, bad choices. And as it states, good intentions, bad choices, a lot of us had good intentions and a lot of things that we made a bad choice, we made a mistake. And the program shows you was also hand in hand with the addiction services program. I completed those 4 successfully. I completed as well as AANA. I continued to go there as well. And I completed aftercare. After I completed all these programs, the staff asked me to mentor them. So the following program, DV, anger management, good intentions, bad choices, and voices, I did mentor them. And I learned a lot more from the programs. As I stand before you today, I can tell you that when I came in till now, I am a better man. I am a more matured man. And I look at things differently. Upon my release, I do have a plan. While I was incarcerated, I did not get a chance to renew my license. So I am going to renew my license right away. Once I'm released, I am going to see my parole officer, and I'm gonna follow all the rules and regulations. And then I have a place to go, my brother. I have many employment opportunities, but for momentarily, immediately, I will start working with my family. Within the first year, I'm gonna start my own family. I'm hoping to start my own business. Within the second year, save enough money to purchase my first property, and then follow my family's footsteps during construction and real estate as well. That's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sludge. What we're going to do here today, we've read your background, what you've accomplished since you've been in. And thank you for filling that in. You filled in a lot for us. So we're going to take turns asking questions to clarify some things that we might have questions on. When we're done with that, the Office of Victim Services has victim input. And during that time, you're not allowed to speak. And then we're going to discuss your case and give you a decision today, okay?
Thank you.
And we're going to start questions today with Board Member Barry.
Thank you very much, Sir Chair. So, Mr. Salaj, I appreciate your opening statement and you're sharing with us the things that you've learned in these programs. I think most of us would probably benefit from taking many of these programs, because it did appear that you had some underlying anger issues going on. So I'm glad that your family was able to point that out to you, and that you were able to take in some of the things that the program was offering and internalize those, so that you can hopefully avoid that behavior in the future. One of the things that was concerning for me in reviewing your file, sir, is the fact that throughout all of the documentations with regard to this conviction, the sex offense, you deny any force. Is that still your position here today?
As I stated in there, that it started consensual as we went, as the transcript shows, and she said that at some point she wanted to stop. At that time, I was not aware, and if I were, immediately I would have stopped. It's been very hard for everybody, the victim and everybody else, so I did make a mistake. I have learned from it. I will continue to learn each and every day.
So your position is still that, do you admit that you were using a little bit, you were a little rougher than he would have liked you to be? Do you admit that? I know that you said, you've been saying, and she's been consistent as well. She said that it was consensual initially, and then
Yes. Now that I understand and I reread everything, and that's what it seems to be. So, and I came to the understanding, like I said, that if I were aware of that, I definitely would have. But like I said, all the paper, everything shows that. So yes.
So I don't like the wording. The ifs and if that said and all of those things really are concerning to me, because again, you were in every document that I read, it really says that you denied this behavior. You denied the fact that she told you no. You denied the fact that you were being aggressive with her. And she has been in shambles ever since this whole thing occurred. Even when you were interviewed by the officer in preparation for today, you were consistent in your denial. And while I appreciate your accepting responsibility and taking accountability for your actions, I'm baffled by what you actually are accepting responsibility for. I know in hindsight, you're saying, I would have stopped, but that's not what you did.
You are correct, and as it shows in there, and as from the beginning to the end, as well as when I went to trial to it, and it was, and I admitted to the part, it was rough. I thought I was under the impression that that's what she wanted, and as well as the trial documents will show that it was said I meant to tell him to stop at that time. Really, if I knew, absolutely, I would have stopped.
All right, let's move forward, because I don't think we're really making much progress in this area. So let's talk a little bit about how the impact that this crime has had on your victim. Having completed the Voices program, tell me what you heard. I heard you say that there are no victimless crimes, which is true. It's a general statement. But what do you think the impact that your actions have had on this? How do you think her world has changed?
For the victim, I'm sure their world is teared apart. Is going to continue. So the trauma, including the family, it's a very hard thing to go through. And for them, it's unthinkable. I mean, it's just unthinkable. And I just hope that one day they forgive me too, and I forgive myself as well, and continue to do better. I wish nothing but the best.
Okay. And just for the record, the state's attorney did submit a written objection to your written opposition to your request for, it's not a request, to your being released early on parole. So I just wanted to mention that. And also, I wanted to talk, did you know that you have a detainer to be returned to Albania?
Yes,
And do you have family there?
I haven't been there in 38 years, so I don't know anybody there.
And what have you appeared for any hearings just yet?
No, I have not.
So there is an active detainer, and if you are granted parole here today, even if you aren't granted parole, we still have to abide by that detainer that has been lodged. So we would have you return to Albania. Is your family in the process of fighting that?
We have not gone through that process. Once we go through that process, I guess, there's nothing we can do until, we go to ICE, then, that's where the process starts.
And so in the event that you do have to return there, you'd have to start all over. So you have no family there, you'd have to get housing and all that stuff.
Yes.
Just to go back just a little bit. So I read in the documents that you were being evicted from your business when the police came to talk to you about this case.
We weren't being evicted, we were terminating the agreement. That
Well,
was
why
my
did-
last month.
Oh,
We
that
were
was the last-
terminating, that was
Okay.
the last month because he wanted to double the rent on the place, the landlord.
Okay. He wanted double the rent. I read also that there was a lot of police activity at that business. Is that true?
There was one complaint about loud noise.
I thought that I read a little bit more than that because you had other charges that were nollied associated with this offense. So I think that they'd come there before. You had a little run-in with it.
They came in for disorderly, for a loud noise, disorderly conduct. They asked for the owner. And when I arrived, and they said, listen, it's a private club, we could go in, we can't go in there. But it was loud, so we have to arrest you because you happen to be the owner. I was not at the location at the time, I did show up. And same thing, I told them that, listen, the noise will go down, they'll keep the noise down.
All right. So I appreciate that explanation. And one last question, and then I'm going to turn the hearing back over to the chair. You completed a sex offender treatment, and you've said more than one time here today that had you known that you were being too rough with the victim, you certainly would have stopped, right? Explain to us how you can avoid putting yourself in this situation again in the future.
Well, very simply, number one is it was alcohol involved, which I don't want nothing. At this place in my life, I'm not at the age, I don't have any more time to waste. The clubs, social clubs, nightclubs, bars, they're not for me. A lot of the stuff that I learned in there to where I will never put myself in any situation to where I harm others or myself.
So,
There was,
Mr. Salat, you intend never to have sex again?
what's that? No,
So let me just tell you that through our training, we have learned that the use of alcohol or substances really do reduce your inhibitions, but the behavior is already there. It lies dormant. And when you have those substances inside you, it makes it okay. You understand what I'm saying? So even though you were saying you're never going to drink again, that's not, the drinking may have added to it, but that wasn't the sole factor. You understand what I'm saying? So going forward, you're a young man. I heard you talk about starting a family. You can't start a family without intimate relations. And so my question to you is, how do you avoid being in this situation again?
Well, like I told you, for me, I'm never gonna be in that situation again. The sexual behaviors and whatnot, and you are correct, but alcohol did have a part in it as well, to where me being alert, aware, and if somebody doesn't want anything or
Right.
part of it, I won't do it. So,
Exactly. But how do you
it-
find that out? How do you find out if they don't want it? How do you,
by knowing the person, by getting to know the person, by speaking, conversing, by not drinking, all these things. And like I said, it just all these things together.
that will help you. It's good to have to actually know the person that you're being intimate with. That's a starting point. It really is.
Yes.
So, and to make sure, ask the question, is this something that you want to do? And get the consent,
Absolutely.
and do you want to stop? That's another question.
What, 100%.
Right. All right. Thank you, Sir Chair.
Board Member Stauskas.
See. So you got a disciplinary report, sir, back in it's like 2020, is that right?
Yes.
Can you just talk about what happened?
It was during COVID. Was a crazy time that nobody knew what was going on, and as well as you guys know how the world was, the prisons were crazy. I was just going into the shower. I removed the mask. The CO turned around and swore and said, "Put the mask on." I said, "I'm proceeding to the bathroom." I put the towel over my mouth. And he said, "Well, I'm gonna write you a ticket. So go take a shower." I took a shower, came out, and I simply asked him, I said, "What did I do?" He said, "Oh, I told you effing put the," I said, "Listen," I said, "if you're gonna write me a ticket," I said, "just spell my name right." That's all I said. And he turned around to where, "You going to SEG?" I said, "What did I do?" I said, "I didn't wear a mask in the shower." And then they came in, they asked me, and I told them the same thing. So they said, "Okay, you go into SEG." That was my first and only ticket throughout my 10.5 years. Even when I went to SEG, I'm gonna be honest with you, I was going to fight it to where, and the reason is, I don't think anybody should have been put in that position to where you went to another facility to where it was madness. Like I said, I don't blame anybody because nobody knew anything about COVID. It was an unknown worldwide. I went there and I was told, "Listen, if you want to go to trial, you're gonna wait 4 weeks. If you want to get out, you get out tomorrow, you go to quarantine, and then you move on." So one of the things I have learned till then, I said, you know what? It doesn't matter whose fault it was. I put myself in that predicament. I accept the responsibility. I signed that ticket and I just moved on, never looked back.
Okay. Understood. Thank you for explaining that. My colleague has asked a lot of questions, and you've answered most of what I had questions about in your opening statement. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I'm going to turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Sludge, at this point, your portion of the hearing is over. And, okay, you can just sit there. Ms. Hamlet-Williams?
Yes, thank you, Sir Chair. Good morning, panel. I do have the victim who would like to address the panel today. One moment. You may begin with your statement.
Good morning. Good morning, parole board members. I am writing my statement to convey my opposition to the application by Dardian C DOC for parole. Every single morning when I wake up, Even after all this time, I must remind myself that the defendant is in prison and can no longer harm me. I have spent the last 12 years trying to heal, 12 years of therapy, medications, and pulling myself out of bouts of deep depression. As a result of the assault, I do have PTSD. I cannot function like a normal citizen in society. And I even have social anxiety. Something as simple as going to the grocery store is a daunting task for me. I still am unable to sleep at night for fear of retaliation. I will always be afraid that he will find me, no matter how much time has passed. I am no longer able to trust people as I did before. The defendant took a part of me that I'll never be able to get back. The sweet, loving social butterfly that I once was is gone. He took my dignity and defiled me. I still have nightmares about that night. My family has been extremely supportive, but is also still reeling from that night, even after all this time. I don't feel safe, even in my own home. My family doesn't feel safe. Sometimes I even still smell the material of the booth from the bar. I still feel his hands in my telling me to take it as he tore into every part of me. I remember begging him on my knees to stop, that it hurt. Once he was inside of me, I knew he wasn't going to. The only thing that I can think of to keep myself alive was to just let him do what he wanted. And after he was done, I can go home. The defendant violated every part of my body and then made me put his penis into my mouth. It was still covered in my own fecal matter. And even now, sometimes I could still taste it. The crime he perpetrated against me was violent and brutal. I strongly urge the parole board, if he were to be released, to notify ICE for his deportation. He is a violent offender that absconded during the trial. And under the circumstances, I feel that it is highly unlikely that he will abide by the conditions of his release and even offend again, maybe even disappear entirely. It's for these reasons that I am urging the board to deny the defendant's request for parole. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you so much for your statement. Please continue with you.
Okay.
Thank you, panel.
Thank you for your input. Thank you for facilitating that, Ms. Hamlet-Williams. Anything further, board? Board Member Baird.
Yeah. I appreciate the input given by the victim. I can only imagine the trauma that she experienced and that she continued to experience on a daily basis, based on the nature of this offense. She's going to continue to experience this, unfortunately, for years to come, because it's not as easy to get over as most people think that it is. I heard her also request that we contact ICE to have Mr. Farage returned back to his homeland. And I think that that's already in the works. He certainly has completed programs that we would have liked to see him complete. He has a limited criminal history. His eligibility date is in December, which is about 2 months away. Yeah, my understanding that ICE needs at least 3 months to try to get him back out of the country. And honestly, if he's going to be deported, I'm of the opinion why have the state pay to house him when he's going to be returned And I don't see anything here showing that he's not going to be returned. So my position is to release him to his detainer with an absolute no contact with the victim. He has 6 years of special parole following his sentence. And if he decides to abscond, he will be returned to prison, and he could potentially serve out the remainder of this sentence and those 6 years. So there's a lot at stake here. Should we decide to contact the victim? Same thing over his head. So I think that although my heart aches for the victim and her experience, I think that, his going back to Albania is in the best interest of public safety at this point. So.
Board Member Sadowski.
Yeah, I agree with my colleague. I did want to say that I did listen to every word that the victim said, and I do sympathize with her, and it's just a horrendous crime, really. But today he presents well. He rates out low, and he's completed the programs. I don't see that there's anything else that he's going to be able to do in there that probably benefit from him. So I agree with my colleague that I think the best way forward here is to grant him today to be released to ICE.
All right, I have released to ICE detainer, halfway house, problem sexual behavior treatment, no contact with victim, JC.
Yeah.
And we got 12-14, right?
Yeah.
Was it the 12-14?
So, regarding Dardian C DOC 389062, I move to grant parole effective 12-14-24 with the following stipulations: release to ICE detainer, halfway house placement, treatment for problem sexual behavior, and no contact with victim, initials JC. Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Mr. Solage, you've been granted parole. Your DOC will release you to your ICE detainer. Thank you. Thank you for coming to the hearing today.
Thank you very much.
Different moves are here for their specialized P8962.
All set.
Yep.
You're all set.
Thank you.
Okay, let's unpack this, and I'll get into the details of the case through the different articles that Sir Richard brought to my attention. But before I do, I want to get some things off my chest. Now, Sir Richard puts in this spreadsheet, and let me just share with you what this, I've shared with you, but I don't share it enough. This is just one tab for the Connecticut one. So you can see here 2024, and we have for the docket of 10/29/2024, and he has the one highlighted, if you can see it here. And then he has the explanation point, Genovese family mobster. And I'm like, wow, let's check out this case. And now, of course, you wouldn't get the impression, let me just zoom in, you wouldn't get the impression of this, that he was a mobster by watching this parole hearing, right? You would have no idea. It's like actually listening to it, without the context, you're like, what's going on here? Who was it? It was Paige who says, I know that it started out consensual, but you were a little rougher than she would have liked it to have been, right? And I just couldn't believe listening to her say those words. Now, it's like insulting the survivor. It's just totally. What do you mean? How could you use those words? You were a little rougher than she would like it to be. Yeah, that's why they sentenced him. That's why they threw the book at him. Meanwhile, while he's out, so he was only out for, I think, 6 or 7 months when he was arrested 3 times for violent felonies. And finally, I think that it's part of they wanted to get him. I don't know, but he had just gotten out of prison for a previous case, and we can go through those. But he has in his jacket extortion, classic mafia stuff. Like someone owed the money, so he went inside, smashed a coffee pot over the guy's head, got $50,000. He was running extortion rings in New York City. He was robbing jewelers, pistol whipping people. I mean, it's like out of the movies. And in this case, he owned like this Albanian nightclub, and she was a bartender there. This was not like what, and then for her to have the courage, I would say almost, you must have assumed, who would have the courage to go and stand up in trial against a known gangster? I mean, I don't know how she did it, and the fear she must be in, because come on, how reliable is ICE in this case? What are the odds that ICE gets notified, and then what are the odds that ICE somehow even, like, I don't think anyone can feel good about ICE right now, and exactly how. I don't know anything about it. I'm not, I'm not putting down people who work. I really don't know. It's just my understanding is that it's a very complicated process, an overworked process with a lot of inefficiencies, and there's no guarantee that he's going to get sent straight, and ICE is going to say, okay, come here, we're going to detain. Okay, I mean, you can be out waiting to go through the court process, like. But let's go through this information. So, for more than 2 years after being charged with sexual assault of a 22-year-old employee at a club he owned, Derby Dardian, aka Danny, was interested in a plea deal. That changed Tuesday after he listened. So he first wanted a plea deal, right? Wasn't interested in a plea deal. Now, that changed Tuesday after he listened to about 80 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes of his accuser, of the survivor, of her tearful, graphic testimony during a trial at Superior Court in Milford. Just as the woman finished describing being manhandled and essayed in the early morning hours of March 2nd, 2012, he whispered to his lawyer, who promptly asked the judge to go to recess. So first he was like, I don't want to, I'm going to go to trial. Then after hearing her for 80 minutes, they said, okay, let's go to recess. Minutes later, he was 36 at the time. He pled guilty. So she did such a good job. She was so impactful. Even he knew, he was smart enough to know that he was screwed. And he will face between 2 and 8 years behind bars when sentenced in July. Now, the crazy thing about this, by the way, is that he absconded. So he absconded, and then the judge threw a book at him. And that's the crazy part, is that if you can imagine the fear that she was in when he disappeared, when he cut his ankle monitor off and disappeared for, it was like 28 days. Now, after the plea, state's attorney Kevin Lawler, who of course didn't show up, said he hopes the federal officials will do what they should have done a long time ago and initiate deportation proceedings against him. An Albanian native already on federal probation in connection with the 2011 robbery extortion case tied to New York City organized crime family. And I guess here's all the point that we've seen here. He was, they never. How many times do you think he was sent to ICE? How many times, so there's the point. I don't think anyone should feel comfortable as getting deported. Background. So here's the details of the crime. Derby police arrested him on March 3rd, 2012, the day after the incident, charging him with first-degree SA and third-degree assault. But the specific allegations against him remained a secret throughout the course of his 19 appearances in the court case. The warrant charging him was sealed to public view. Last week, he opted to take the case to trial. It was not a jury trial, Judge Denise Markle would render a verdict after hearing evidence. Tuesday was the first day of testimony. Lawler had called 2 witnesses in the trial, Derby police officer Michael Baldo and the victim, before Silege opted to take the plea deal. Baldo testified briefly about interviewing the victim in the case, and then the 22-year-old woman who at the time of the assault had been tending bar for about a week at the Albanian social club known as Club Europa. The club opened in late 2009. The victim herself took the stand. She said in the brief time that she worked at the club, he was a nice boss, but that she was wary of him after being told he had ties to the Italian and Albanian organized crime. She went on to describe the night of March 1st, 2012. The club was to be closed the next day, she testified. About 15 to 20 regulars gathered there for one last night. The mood was festive. Customers drank and danced to Albanian music. At one point, his girlfriend, so our perp's girlfriend, poured the victim a shot and then taught her some dance steps. Later, a male customer tried to get her to dance with him. She didn't want to. So he, I don't know, I'm pronouncing it. He goes by an alias. Why don't you call him the alias? He goes by Danny. Call him Danny. Let's call him Danny. So Danny helped her fend off the man's attention. She testified, but then told her he wanted to have sex with her himself. She tried to play it off. I laughed about it. He said he was drunk. But by the time the bar emptied out into the early morning hours of March 2nd, 2012, Danny and his girlfriend had gotten into a spat and left in separate cars. The victim stayed behind to clean up when she heard a car pull up behind the building. It was Danny's. He walked into the building and began kissing her. Then he led her to a booth and started taking her clothes off. I told him, I don't know about this. I don't know if I can do this. She testified to telling him at the time. I was nervous, she said. I didn't really know what to do. Lawler asked why. He's the kind of person you don't say no to, the woman replied, alluding to Danny's reputed mob ties. Danny then grabbed a fistful of her hair and forced himself on her, she testified, crying on the stand and hesitating when the attorney asked her to describe the graphic details. I don't know what gives someone the courage to get up on the stand and do this, but also against a known, like, I don't know how she did it. She said she told him to stop several times during the ordeal. He told me to take it like a good girl, she testified at one point, like a whore. Police reaction. Minutes after the woman described the ordeal, he pled guilty under the Alfred doctrine to a single count of first-degree sexual assault. Under Alfred, a plea deal worked out between the attorney and Danny to face up to 8 years in prison, sentencing scheduled for July 1st. Now, in the meantime, the judge allowed him to post a $250,000 bond, and in the case after his arrest, and told the judge he's now living in Shelton to be confined in his home, monitored electronically from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. on weeknights and 24 hours a day on weekends. Outside of the courthouse, he said the woman on the stand convinced Danny to take the plea deal. Her testimony was the reason he changed his plea, the DA said, calling it a difficult case. Lawler said the victim supported the plea deal. He said she is a hero for helping to get him off the streets. At the end of the day, this conviction is a credit to a very brave woman who stuck with this case for 2 years. She was brave the night she was assaulted, and she's been brave ever since. The prosecutor also thanked Milford crisis and helping the woman in the assault. And he also wondered why Danny hadn't been deported after he pled guilty in July 2011 to 6 federal robbery and extortion charges connected to the New York Genovese's crime family. I wonder why wasn't he deported? Don't worry, I'm sure they'll do it this time. Danny received a sentence of time served and 3 years of probation in that case. In a court filing, he had agreed to cooperate with federal authorities, after which he was relocated to Derby. So I don't know, did he make state witness? Is that what it is? He's certainly more than eligible to be deported, now with 7 violent felonies on his record, the prosecutor said. It makes you wonder why he hasn't been already. Through the sexual assault case was resolved Tuesday, Danny still faces legal problems. On January 30th, he was arrested by the police on charges of second-degree burglary, breach of peace, and criminal mischief. This was additional to what he has. According to the court documents, Danny is accused of pushing in the door of his girlfriend's residence, at which she became verbally violent. The girlfriend left the residence out of fear, for which Danny accused of destroying items throughout the apartment. And he was due in Superior Court on April 24th in that case. And I mean, it's just remarkable, really. And then basically what happened is the judge, so he thought he would get less time, but remember, like I said, when he was out, he disappeared. He disappeared for 27 days. So if you can imagine the fear she was in while he's waiting for something, he cuts his bracelet off. He disappears for 27 days, which shows that is an impulsive man who is not thinking, which means during that time, the fear she must have been, and I can't imagine, maybe she left the state when that happened, or maybe they didn't even tell her, who knows. And they caught him at his friend's house. And so the judge sentenced him to even more time. She rightly took looks to you for justice in this court for justice, Lawler told Judge Lanotti. The reason we are all standing here is because of her bravery. The victim said the only thing to come out of her experience was that she was able to summon the strength she didn't know she had. I will never feel sorry or have empathy for him, even though he says he's done nothing wrong, she said. Immediately before sentencing to 14 years, so his sentence jumped up, I guess because of the he absconded and things like that. But so he picked up all those extra years. My computer's lagging. And there's many, many, many more articles about the different crimes that he's been convicted of, about the different accusations. He's gotten away with a lot of things too. So if you can only imagine, he is truly a dangerous man. And it's almost nerve-wracking even making this parole hearing on him. But you know, what can you do? What can you say? This is, I guess, the justice system for you. I think what enrages me about this entire thing is that I don't think, okay, for one, it's that you just think again about how this parole hearing was conducted. He has a low, the statewide whatever system says that he has a low risk to reoffend. How is it possible that a serial offender with eight felonies has a low risk to reoffend? He was literally out for like 7 months when he did this, and then picked up charges while he was on bond for this charge. Okay. And then the parole board talks to him like they're trying to have a conversation. Well, you took the programs, you know, and how would you make sure this doesn't happen again? And then he's like, well, I would get to know the person more, and Paige was, yeah, that's great. Knowing the person is good. Getting consent is good. And it's like, do you not know who you're talking to? Do you really think that that's the problem? And it's like they're having this conversation with, I don't know, someone that they've done no research on. They have no idea who he is, or they're just completely, lost in their own, drunk on their own Kool-Aid about how this stuff works. But either way, it's scary. And again, that has to do with a DA. Like, that's the thing. Louisiana, at least the idea that the DAs are now even more and more and more often showing up, it makes such a big difference. But this parole board, all they have to do is look into this guy's jacket or do a Google search and see, like, wow, this isn't having a conversation about, you just have to. It started consent. It was a little rougher than you thought, and oh, this is what you'll do in the future to make sure this doesn't happen again. Yeah, you'll get to know the person. You're doing great. It's like, wow. The parole board is like as dangerous as the criminals in many cases. And I was not impressed by, the new parole board member. You would think he would know better. Zizaskis, forget Pol. We know Pol's a lost cause, but Zizaskis, I'm not pronouncing his name right. He was in like the anti-crime gang unit. He was a lieutenant in the police force for all those years. And what did he say? He said, he's like, yeah, he ranks out low, and he has something or other. It just wasn't. I think he ranks out low, and what's there more to do in prison? Anyways, I mean, they made the decision to go to ICE, and if he doesn't go to ICE, that they take him back. But I don't believe in the way that the system will work once he gets paroled. But anyways, we'll keep track on this. I'll keep Googling it. And with that, I'll let you go.
The crime he perpetrated against me was violent and brutal. I strongly urge the parole board, if he were to be released, to notify ICE for his deportation. He is a violent offender that absconded during the trial. And under the circumstances, I feel that it is highly unlikely that he will abide by the conditions of his release and even offend again, maybe even disappear entirely. It's for these reasons that I am urging the board to deny the defendant's request for
And to actually know the person that you're being intimate with, that's a starting point. It really is.
Yes.